All right, and so the last main perspective on personality we're going to talk about here is what are called trait perspectives. And there's two main ones we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the 3-factor and the 5-factor model here. So the first one here is Eysenck's trait theory, or the 3-factor theory. And really what these trait theories do is they try to take specific traits or pieces of personality and put them on scales or linear kind of perspectives with, one kind of focus or one kind of behavior on one end and one kind of behavior on another end. And so, for example, this 3-factor model takes these 3 factors of extroversion and introversion, neuroticism and emotional stability, and then psychonicism and impulse control, and puts these 3 factors on sort of these linear scales. And you see where people fall on these 3 factors, and that creates sort of this overall personality perspective or personality sort of type. Again, this was one of the earlier ones where it was a 3-factor theory, and we see these 3 different factors kind of play out. But a more popular one today, and one that we kind of rely on and use in a lot of different aspects of psychology, is actually what's called the 5-factor model, or the Ocean model. And this is taking, again, 5 different traits or 5 different pieces of personality and laying them out sort of in this linear fashion where you can see how people fall on the spectrum of each of these traits. And so these are identified as sort of the 5 most influential pieces of personality, and this generally tends to be the most influential personality theory that we use in practice. And so we can see these 5 factors are O for openness, or basically how open one is. C for conscientiousness, basically being able to, be aware of things that they need to do and are working towards completing things. E for extroversion, and on the other, that's extroversion and introversion, and all on one sort of linear scale. A for agreeableness, and then N for neuroticism. And so again, each of these sort of plays a role in identifying someone's personality, where they may range on each of these 5 dimensions, and that creates their unique personality based on these 5 factors. Kind of a fun little anecdote here is that agreeableness, extroversion, and conscientiousness tend to be associated with happiness when we see higher values in those 3 things. So when we look at these factors, we can see again some distinctions between high versus low levels in each. So for the first one of openness, right, we see things like high levels of openness being people or personality traits that are more artistic, insightful, intelligent, whereas low tend to be more commonplace or shallow or have more narrow thinking. Conscientiousness being deliberate, efficient, precise. Low levels being careless, frivolous, irresponsible. The extroversion or sociable scale, right, has to do with being adventurous, outgoing, whereas being quiet, reserved, or shy, more on that introversion other end of that scale. Agreeableness, cooperative, general, sympathetic, versus cruel, quarrelsome, unfriendly. And then neuroticism being anxious, maybe temperamental, versus calm and content and stable. And so you can see that each of these 5 things kind of gets at a different part of personality, like a whole different characteristic or a whole different trait of personality. And people can fall anywhere on a spectrum for each of these 5 components. And so it really is kind of interesting to take these and use them as a way to really get a holistic picture of a person, because everyone is going to vary in different ways on each of these 5 dimensions.